I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully you can see that. So the final part of today, we'll be thinking about reflection in terms of developing our own practice and moving forward with our own practice as well. So we're going to tie everything together that we've discussed today. And I think a key finding from today and a key discussion point for us today has been that idea of belonging and how we develop that sense of belonging through inclusion, but also how, oh, excuse me, sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry about that. If I share again for you. But how inclusivity really is a collaborative ethos. So we have to work together and we have to work with like-minded people who can really support us with that journey together. So if I start, if we look at a person-centered approach, so really our ALN system is underpinned by this person-centered approach. And if we look at it, almost like a cyclical model here. So if we start at the top where we focus on the learner. So the reason that, we're embarking on this professional learning through the MA, the reason that we've gone into our careers is because we really want to make a difference for our learners and we want to make sure that we give them all of the tools that they need in order to make success. And then if we think about that first starting point, we need to know our learners really well in order for us to highlight those goals and aspirations with them, to really ask them what they want to achieve and then the role that we play in supporting them along that journey. But we also need to think about barriers as well. So with our learners, when we get to know them really well and know what they need, we also need to really highlight what could some of those barriers be and then what our role is in terms of either knocking those barriers or minimizing the impact of those barriers, as much as what we can within our profession. So in terms of those goals, if we move to this element here, those strengths and aspirations, every learner in our setting, in our classroom, in our school, or in our college, is able to achieve. But what is important to them? What do they want to achieve? And how are they involved in that process in telling us what they need and what our role is to support them with those goals and aspirations? When we know what those goals are and when we know the strengths of those learners to help them achieve those goals, what do we need to do next? So what are our options? So is it something that we need to do specifically? Is it an element of collaboration that we need to set up? And then who needs to be involved? So, as teachers, as practitioners, as educators, we're really passionate about finding the answers, but sometimes we don't always know the answers ourselves. And that's okay, because we can then set up those collaborative opportunities, whether that's speaking to a specialist, speaking to another practitioner in another setting to share that good practice. I think one of our experts earlier said that, they access these collaborative networks because they are speaking with other people who have the same goal and who have the same ethos of inclusivity. So, who can we really bring into this situation? And it might not even be specialists in the profession. It could be people surrounding the learner themselves as well. So, parents being on board. We know that the IDP process should involve a range of perspectives, obviously the child or young person, but their family and their parents and their caregivers as well. When we've got to that point of setting up those next steps and those opportunities for collaboration, we need to then think about the questions that it leaves us with. So maybe we've set up a collaborative opportunity and maybe we've had that chance to discuss together. And then what questions are we left with in order for us to start that process again? Because over the last 2 conference Saturdays, something that has really been clear is that inclusivity is a never-ending journey. Nobody or no setting can ever say, we're the most inclusive we'll ever be, because we should be responding to the learners, in front of us at that moment. And, when the next cohort arrives to us, potentially our inclusive practice will look completely different because we're responding in the moment to the learners that we have in front of us as well. So that cycle then starts again. And I think this person-centered approach cycle here is a really nice tool to get us thinking about reflection. So part of your assignment that, Laura talked about this morning is about being a reflective practitioner. You're using a reflective cycle in order to really pinpoint the successes of your inclusive practice and maybe areas of development as well, because we know that highlighting those areas of development are equally as important as talking about the strengths. So we know that we're going to be moving forward with that journey. So what I'd like you to do in your first breakout session is think about a critical incident that you've experienced as a practitioner. This critical incident doesn't have to be really significant or, big in terms of incident itself. It's just something that has made you pause and think about something. So it could be something really small that's happened in the middle of a lesson or in a session that's made you really stop and think about practice. Maybe you've had a realization, maybe you've thought about the next step for something. And I wanted to think about some of these key questions. So with the critical incident, what were your key concerns and what impact did it have on your practice? And did it lead to you changing anything as well? And further questions that you can think about, which I will put in your breakout rooms for you, so you've got them to refer back to. Why do you view the situation like that? How else could you interpret the situation? And what other action, maybe on reflection, could you have taken to develop that impact further? So when you're in these breakout rooms, obviously just be mindful of confidentiality of your settings. When we come back, I'm not going to ask you to share because I think potentially these incidents might be personal to your practice and might be pertinent to your practice as well. So we won't take any feedback. So this is just really an opportunity for you and your groups with your other professionals, your peers here, to really think about something that's had an impact on you. So we're starting that reflective thinking about, how to move forward and how to develop that inclusive practice even further. So if I just press stop sharing and I will stop recording.